All right, team, we are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have a new guest, PJ, joining me who has a range of experience in product management at a variety of tech companies, as well as some time in management consulting at BCG. So I thought he'd be an interesting guest for this week's episode. Welcome to the show, PJ.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Yeah, why don't we just start with a little bit of background about yourself, and then we can get into some more of the nitty gritty.
Of course, I think I will start with what I do now, and then we'll talk a little bit about the history. So, I'm a director of product management right now, and my core role is of product management, consulting, transformation, and coaching. But that is not how I started. I started way back in a very tech focused role wherein I was into development profiles. And from there, I moved into different roles that were gradually getting more and more product oriented. And I was working at American Express when I started getting a feel of the product ownership profile. At that time, I was owning one of the platforms that was rated for server vulnerability, and I was doing the product ownership of it. And then gradually, I moved. I moved to some experiences that helped me understand that how the work that I have been doing so far is different from the work of a product management. And I think that is when I was in BCG where I started getting real exposure to product management along with my other exposures. And there I got a lot of exposure to work with domains, clients from different domains. And my role was more focused on developing a platform that was being used for data analytics by different clients that we had. So I think that is the place wherein I learned the most about product management, and I continued that journey. I joined Auto Trader, and right now I'm working at EPAM. And now I am mostly focused on working with multiple clients from all the domains, be it healthcare, financial sector, healthcare devices, edtech, and whatnot. And basically, I'm working with the product leadership, trying to help them establish a product focused organization, help them understand what does being product focused mean, and how can they shift their ways of working so that the work that they are doing and the product that they are creating is becoming more and more customer centric. So that is who I am. I'm definitely coming in from a technology background, but right now I'm product management consultant, transformation, and coach.
Well, thanks for the great background there, PJ. You know, one of the things you mentioned was working with a variety of companies and helping them develop more product focused organizations. And one thing I've noticed is that there are companies that are very maybe engineering focused, and some that are very sales focused or marketing focused, and some that are founder focused, where the CEO kind of embodies all of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, how do you advise companies who are saying, hey, we feel like we need a stronger product perspective at the company, but there are already these key kind of
Yeah.
constellations of power? How
Yeah.
do you think about that?
I think that's such a appropriate point, and I see that all over. So when I work with companies of different sizes, all of them come with a different kind of DNA, and that DNA is built because of the way they have worked and operated in the past. And interestingly, most of them recognize that what have got them here may not get them where they want to go. So there is a desire for them to change. But the challenge that they face most of the time is that they do not know what does that change mean for them. And most of the time, what we do really is try to do an assessment wherein we establish their current baseline. What are their challenges? What are their current ways of working? While we are doing that kind of assessment, we are establishing that the kind of gap that they have into their current ways of working and where they want to go. And from there, what we really do is try to come up with some of the differentiation in the way they define the product, the way they work around building the product, the way they define the success of a product, and then the way they are organized around all of this, right? So it's not a one size fit all solution in most of the cases, but definitely there are some common threads. Common threads such as you should have a common definition of the product, which is understood in the same way by the founder, by the VPs, by your director, by your leadership, and up to by your developer and QAs, including your sales guys and everyone else, so that the entire organization works and thinks about the product that they are building from a particular vision perspective. So everyone should have one focus, right? So this is one of the, let's say, a common thing that we do. The other thing that we have seen is a challenge for most of the organizations is related to their silos. So due to the lack of common vision, there are multiple silos. So engineering team is working on something of their own. They have got different motives, different objectives. They may not even have the visibility of how their current work that they are doing in this sprint, let's say, is going to change the life of the end customer, because they do not have that kind of visibility. The product team, the product managers might be thinking from a different perspective. They do not, they may not be taking into consideration the challenges, the visibility that is needed by the tech team. So what we do is try to do a end-to-end value stream understanding, and then bring everyone on board, so that we are able to break the silos, so that even in the value stream of creation of the value for the product, even the person who is sitting at the lowest level, at the maybe the leftmost level, is able to see to the end customer that the work that I'm going to do today, how is it going to change the life of my end customer, right? So we try to bring out that perspective. So these are just couple of examples, but I think what we tend to do is try to make small changes that are more palatable, and focus more on the shift in the way we think and do things, rather than trying to run something big which is not understood by different people at different levels. So I think change management becomes a big part of my job. So I need to make sure that whatever I am telling, whatever I am asking them to do, whatever I am communicating as a gap area, is understood well, is received well, and then the recommendations that I'm giving, they are able to implement it on their own, most probably. If not on their own, at least they should be able to understand the end vision of it.
Yeah, PJ, this is great. Let me just double down a little bit on that. When
Mhm.
you make those recommendations, let's say you find an organization where they are siloed and where there's um, a lot of variation in terms of the vision for what the product is or should be. Is your are you do you generally propose like big time wholesale changes to the process, or is it more kind of gradual incremental in terms of the change management?
I think the approach that we take is help them visualize what does good look like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we tell them that ideally this is how a company, if they are able to operate as a company, as an organization in that manner, it will give them XYZ results. But
Mm-hmm.
we recognize that that is not a 1 day game, that is not a 1 week game, that is not a 1 month game. It is a game that we need to play for maybe couple of months or maybe couple of years, depending on the gap area that we have. So we come up with a roadmap that, guys, this is where we want to go, but what is the first step, what is the second step? And typically the first step, the second step that we talk about could take maybe couple of weeks for them to start executing. So doing those small changes, small tweaks into their ways of working, so that it's not too disruptive for anyone. Because I think the core of change management is that if you try to change too much too fast, you will fail, right? So I think our approach is always to find that nimble changes that we can make, and the changes that we tend to recommend, that we tend to implement, are those that help them not just change their ways of working, but also help them tweak their ways of thinking. Because if I am able to start shifting them and their mindset in a certain manner, the change, the journey that we are going to do in the future starts becoming more and more easy for us. The more aligned they are, the more aligned their thinking is, the easier is the journey going forward. So of course it's a long term goal, long term vision, long term roadmap that we draw, but the execution is always on a step by step basis, very nimble, very small changes.
PJ, let's say someone that's listening to this now works at one of those companies where they're like, yeah, we're super siloed and there's there's not alignment around what this product even is and who our
Yeah.
customer is. Um, and they wanted to think about potential initial steps they could take because
Hmm.
they're worried that if they try and
Yeah.
do a huge 90-degree turn, the organization is not going to be ready for
Yeah.
that. What
Yeah.
would be some examples of like initial baby steps that people could
Uh-huh.
take?
Definitely. I think one of the foundational things that we definitely need to have is a common definition. You can think of in the terms of taxonomy, which means that how are we defining the product, right? What is our product? Identifying our product. So you can also think of it as a business case for the product. What is the value proposition that we have? Why are we building? What are we building? Who are we trying to serve to? What are our core offerings? Who are we competing against? What are the stages in which we add the value, and how do we deliver that value to our customer? So these things combined together can become one piece that you can start implementing, and it might take for you to maybe a week or two, right, to create the first version of these things, right? And then you take that first version, then you keep on iterating and refining it going forward. But once you are done with the first version of this foundational step, what you can add on top of it is defining your personas and establishing a way, a mechanism for us to prioritize things. Okay, so working on these two things together, which means that we are building empathy not just for us but for the entire team, because we are talking about the features in the terms of persona. So we are not just talking about that we are going to build a, let's say, a payment feature on my e-commerce site. What we'll tell is that we are going to create a payment feature for old people who cannot use card, so that they are able to do the payment more easily. Let's say that is my problem, that feature that I'm building on. If I start using that as a communication tool, then it becomes much easier for me to have the conversation with different stakeholders and help them communicate why we are doing what we are doing. Okay, and then you, on top of that, you add a particular kind of prioritization framework. I do not advocate any particular framework. The important thing is that you should have one mechanism. You can choose any of the very established frameworks like 2 by 2. You can use RISE. You can use any other framework, right? Effort, impact, whatever you choose, Moscow. The important thing is that you should have at least one framework. That framework should be defined. That framework should be understood by everyone in your team. And when I say in your team, I am not referring to only the product team. I'm talking about the entire stakeholder group that is involved there. They all should be agreeing to that way of that mechanism of prioritization. They all should be able to give input to that prioritization framework, and that all process should be transparent, right? So doing this could take you another 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on the size of the product, the size of the team that you have, right? So now we are talking about, let's say, steps that we can take for next 4 weeks to 8 weeks. So this becomes part of the initial roadmap. Depending on the acceptance that you are getting to the work that we are doing, you can add more topics to it, you can add more flavor, you can add more things to do. If you see that no, there is more resistance, there is more change management needed, you might be able to slow down the pace, because it might take much higher level of effort to build the consensus. At times what we typically keep on doing is that we come up with an idea, before even implementing some of the changes we have spent couple of weeks to just build consensus with all the stakeholders. Sometimes building consensus with the business group is easier, but building that with tech group is not that easy, because tech is accustomed to certain way of working. They might have to do some changes in the way they are writing the code, deploying the code, or maybe doing other things in order to support the changes that we are building. So depending on the kind of organization, the maturity of the product, the maturity of the organization that we are working with, there could be some prerequisites that we need to work with different stakeholders to make everyone aligned, so that on a particular day when we start the transformation journey, they are ready for that transformation journey. So I think that's a very it's a very custom experience for all of the clients and companies.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to shift gears a little bit, PJ, and get your thoughts on the construction of product teams in general.
Hmm.
Given that it's 2025, I think there's a lot of people saying like, "Hey, maybe we don't need as many PMs, or maybe we don't even need PMs. Maybe an engineering manager with a good chatbot, or a marketing VP with some AI assistants can whip up things that we normally would look to a product management team to do.
Mhm.
What's your take on how like companies of the future will be structured as it relates to product management personnel?
I think that's a great question, and we see those conversations coming up. That
Hmm.
why do we need a separate person? Do we need a separate person? Can my engineering manager take that role? And my answer to most of the situations as product managers do is it depends, right? It depends on several factors. Number one is what is the maturity and understanding level of the particular person that we are talking about? Are they capable of wearing two different hats? Because to be very frank, there is a difference in the way a product manager should approach to a problem and the way a technology leader should approach to a problem. Now, I think the easiest way for me to talk about that is think of any product from four perspective. Okay, whenever we talk about that we are creating a product or we have a product and we want that product to be successful, there are four factors that need to happen. And I think I'm taking this from the book of Marty Kagan, Transformed, right? So
Hmm.
there are aspects of feasibility, usability, viability, and value. Now, you need to have different capabilities in order to be able to balance all four. What we have seen most of the time is that product managers mostly own the value and the business viability aspect.
Hmm.
And then they should be collaborating with their design expert and engineering expert for usability and feasibility aspect, right? That is how all that four come together. As a product manager, your responsibility is to maintain the balance between four of them. If any one of them is not balanced, eventually that leads to a decline in the acceptance of the product. Now, talking about who should be able to play that role, I at the end of the day, I feel that product management is just a role. It can be played by anyone who is having that kind of soft skills, hard skills, mindset, etc. Now, if there's a particular company wherein we decide that the engineering manager should be playing that role, definitely, yes, sure, why not? They should be able to play that role, but they need to be able to understand how to play that role. And I think that is where the aspect of coaching, product coaching, comes into picture. So we have seen it a lot that the companies that are transforming from, let's say, project ways of working to product ways of working, they want their existing team managers or maybe their BAs to become POs, right? So there's a transition needed from BA to PO.
Hmm.
So we do that kind of coaching for them. So there's a combination of training and coaching so that we are able to support them in their journey to transition from one role to other. If you ask me, does that work? I would say definitely it works. But in order to for it to work effectively, there are certain things that needs to happen. Number one is that we need to have some kind of patience in the overall leadership, because transformation is a long game. And when we talk about shifting gears, when we talk about shifting roles of people, the leadership buy-in is very much needed. There will be a transition period that needs to be aligned with the leadership so that we can do that transition. The second aspect is that those people who are transitioning from one role to other, who are taking up the new role, are they doing it out of interest or out of compulsion? I think depending on that, a lot shifts in the way you are going to conduct those transitions. I have
Hmm.
seen that there are people who are transitioning to product management because they do not have any other option. And I have worked with people who are so passionate about product management that they want to do it because they feel like this is the way through which they can create bigger impact. So depending on their passion, their perseverance to this shift, I think the result changes a lot. And I believe that you'll agree with me that being a product manager is not that easy, is not that straightforward. You need to be able to balance a lot of things. And if you do not do it for passion, if you do not do it with your own will, then the journey becomes tough, because it's a challenge on a day in day out basis. You will never have a dull day.
That is for sure. I'm curious, PJ, what do you do when you encounter, let's say, a business analyst that really wants to bring product management to their company and wants to serve as a product manager, but the rest of the organization is like not quite ready for that,
Yeah, yeah,
because they might say, well, why is this guy asking to take on this scope, and
yeah,
this term owner sounds very like I'm losing power. Have you seen that situation?
a lot. In fact, that's very common, and that challenge arises because we need to understand that product is not built by one person or a group of people. Product is something that has got its own value stream, and that value stream touches most of the time your entire organization. Some of the time that value stream might be touching some pieces of some parts of the organization very heavily. At some cases, in some situations, that touch point might be less, but the reality is that touch point happens. And when we talk about the role of product manager, that product manager is leading that entire value stream. Now, if I talk about that transformation, and if I focus on only one part of the organization for that transformation, then definitely I am going to face challenges in the remaining part of the value stream. So typically, when we talk about becoming product focused organization, building product centered teams, building product centric organization, there's a huge change management effort involved. And I already briefly touched upon the leadership buy in, which means that we need to have that leadership support so that the entire organization at least understands the kind of change we are going through. They should be able to understand the shift in the position, the shift in the way of working, and the shift in the dynamics of the team that is happening, and due to which someone who was an order taker till yesterday might become a leader tomorrow, and they might be asking some for uncomfortable questions. And to me, that's a good scenario to be in. If that person starts asking uncomfortable questions, it means that that person has now started owning things. It might not be accepted very well by the entire organization at first, but I think we also need to consider that any kind of transformation goes through forming, storming, norming, and then performing kind of stages. So I think those initial stages wherein we are just forming and norming and a storming kind of thing, I think those are the places wherein we see a lot of noise and a lot of change management, stakeholder management, leadership, communication, all that thing needs to happen so that that transition is smooth. In my experience, once we are able to cross that storming phase and the new roles are becoming more and more functional, and they are starting to operate in a manner so that they are able to show the value of their position, I think the acceptance for that particular role starts coming in. But in my experience, that shift could take anywhere between a month to 6 months, 8 months, depending on the dysfunctionality of the organization that is existing, and also depending on the kind of change management that we are doing. But I think it's part of the journey. You need to see it as a transition that has to happen.
PJ, let's take the inverse scenario where leadership and maybe even the CEO is like, hey, we really need to build a stronger product muscle in this company. And they've decided that they need to hire outside to bring in a new product leader.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the key competencies that they should think about? Because let's say they come back and they say, yeah, we posted this role and now I have 1,000 applicants.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to, pick the right person?
I, I believe that when we talk about an organization, whether be it a small or big, if it is going through a particular phase of transition from one stage to another, and you are looking for someone who can help you do that transition, who can be the captain of the ship while that ship is moving through the rough waters, I think the best bet is someone who has already done that in past,
Mm-hmm.
which means someone who has got the experience of setting up a product focused organization, someone who has done that kind of transition in the past. And I think people who come from consulting background, would particularly be very good in this kind of role, because due to the sheer nature of their work, they get exposed to a lot of these kind of transitions. So someone who has been into product consulting role, you can bring that person in as a fractional leader
Hmm.
for the duration when you are doing that transition. And maybe once you have passed through that transition phase, then you can go back to the traditional product leader, product manager, product management director, that kind of profile, who can just keep on steering the ship in the right direction. But I think you need that kind of expertise when you are navigating the rough waters. There might be different kind of profiles, but we need to identify someone who has either done it in the past, who has been into that situation earlier, whether as a leader or whether as a consultant, right? But I think some kind of past experience is definitely going to make a lot of difference when you are navigating through these kind of scenarios.
Well, last question for you, PJ, before we ask you about how people can learn more about your work and your thinking and how they can stay connected with you. My question is, there's probably some PMs that are watching this that would be curious about what some common mistakes or challenges that you've seen acting PMs make that are often blockers to their career success? Are there some sort of frequent patterns you've seen for practicing product managers that they can reflect more on, as they grow in their careers?
I think definitely the one thing that is coming up straight ahead in my head is, uh, I have seen many product managers who lose sight of a strategy and get too much involved into execution. I do not blame anyone, but I think it's happening because the role of a product manager is often too engaged. You
Mm.
are often so much drawn into the day in day out fire that it might be easier for you to lose sight of the strategy, the vision that you have. And I think the moment you lose sight of that strategic vision and the direction that you need to go, and you start getting too much overpowered by the tactics of the day in day out work that you are doing, I think you lose sight of your future, you lose sight of your direction. And that also results into a product manager who is not able to navigate the challenges of product management. So I think that is definitely one of the major ones. The second one that I feel it happens too often with the role of product management is, there either, I would say, lesser drive, or maybe less focus on stakeholder management and communication. They sometimes start taking things for granted,
Mm.
that I'm working on this product for a couple of years, I have got 10, 15, 100 stakeholders, they already know what I'm doing, right? I do not go back to them and then tell them again every month that what I'm doing and why I'm doing. I think that is another mistake that many people do, especially in the early stages of their career. And they I think that does not work in their favor. My recommendation to especially the new product managers is that pay special attention to your communication strategy and stakeholder management. It does not matter whether you have communicated your strategy, your vision, your steps, your progress, etc., to your stakeholders last month. Do it every month. If not, if you cannot do it monthly, at least do it quarterly. Your stakeholders have got different other things to remember, right? And it's your responsibility, not theirs, for you to make sure that they do not forget you. The work that you are doing, they are kept updated about it. The direction, the vision that you have, they are appraised about it, and you are consistently getting their feedback, their suggestions, etc., and you are keeping them engaged. I think this goes a long way in making sure that you as a product manager have a more stable and progressing career.
That's great advice, PJ. I mean, especially that last one resonates a lot with me because I, there have been times in my career where I've had to ask teams to come in and provide an update on their project. And it's usually because I haven't heard from them in a while, or I'm not sure what the heck's going on.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
There are teams where I would rarely need to ask for that because they were so good about proactively communicating both like broadly in, email newsletters, but also in the one-on-ones where everybody seemed to know what that project was about and felt pretty good about it. And then there were these others that kind of were a little bit off the radar and might make the team feel more autonomous for a little while, but risks them kind of drifting off course and then being kind of reined in. But that's a hard lesson to learn, and I've seen many PMs kind of follow the pattern that you described earlier.
I think the underlying message there is that over communication never hurts, but under communication will hurt you sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. PJ, this has been a great conversation. How can people stay connected with you and learn more from you and hear your thoughts?
I think the best way to connect and reach out to me is, of course, LinkedIn. And I post daily on LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn post, I talk about the different aspects of product management. So if there's someone who is interested in learning different aspects of product management, what is the life of a product management of a product manager, how can you become a product manager, what are the key aspects of product management, etc., they can follow me on my LinkedIn. And I also have a Substack newsletter wherein I share monthly thoughts on how can you become a product oriented professional. If you are a tech person who wants to move into product, it's for you. If you are someone who is not into product and want to get into product, it's for you. But if you are already a product manager, then it is also for you because it will help you strengthen your product mindset. So I would highly encourage your readers to check that out.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
maybe we can share the link later on.
Yeah, I'll put links to both your LinkedIn and your Substack below when we publish this interview, and really appreciate you coming by. Is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't touch on before we wrap up?
I think it has been a great experience chatting with you, Tom, for last around 30 minutes. I think maybe my last thoughts would be to break a dogma. People think that if you are not having a technology experience, you cannot become product manager. I see a lot of it, and I just want to tell your readers that it's not true. Having technology experience can help you become a product manager, but it will not act as a showstopper for you. So it does not matter who you are, where are you from, what kind of experience you have. If you have the desire and passion to become a product manager, you can. And you can reach out to me in case you need any help and guidance. But it is surely possible, and many people have done it, so you can do it too.
Yeah, I agree with that. As a history major who spent 20 plus years in product management at a variety of companies, I can attest that it's always helpful to have a technical background.
Yeah.
But actually, the thing that separates the most impactful PMs is usually less on the technical side and more on the strategic and interpersonal and kind of customer centricity side, which is hard to learn in any school, and you just sometimes have to just get a lot of repetitions in there.
Yes, and I think mentorship and coaching goes a long way in building that.
Indeed, for sure. Well, thank you, PJ. I hope you have a great rest of your week and look forward to publishing this interview soon. And hopefully we'll have you back in the show again in the future.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing the stage with me, and I really look forward for chatting with you again. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care, PJ.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that was PJ. What an interesting interview. Really well thought out, coherent answers to a lot of questions. So worth rewatching or reading the Substack summary because PJ packed a lot of insights in there. I will share some of the big takeaways from me that might be of interest to you all. So I think, at the very end of the interview, when he talked about common mistakes PMs make, I totally agree with him. And they're kind of like two ends of the spectrum. One being that some PMs are not strategic enough. And in fairness to them, it often isn't because they can't be, but it's because the incentives are so strong to go, go, go and ship, ship, ship. And send out emails saying we launched this thing and here's the measurable impact, that there aren't as many incentives to have a really sound winning strategy and vision. That will naturally play out in a year or two into the project, but sometimes you can kind of get this false sense of product success through sheer velocity. And it's not till later that you realize, oh, the strategy is a little bit off. And then on the other extreme, PJ shared some interesting advice around, the need to communicate well and keep people appraised of what's going on. That's kind of the opposite, the flip side of that coin, which is sometimes those folks are very strategically focused, and they're kind of really honing the strategy to provide a winning path for the product, but they're not as good communicating the week to week progress. And then leadership is like, oh, well, what's going on with that team? And so in both scenarios, you could have kind of a little bit of impedance between leadership and the core team, where in the first case, teams like going fast, shipping a lot of things, leadership is like, I don't know if this is like the right problem to solve, or is this what's the end game here? That's an issue. And then on the other extreme, you have the core team that has a great vision, a great strategy, is not communicating well, is not showing that things are moving. And then leadership's like, that team, I haven't heard from them, or they're always talking about these new market insights or customer insights, but what have they actually done? Are they able to execute? And so of course you want to triangulate and be that PM that leads a team or org that is very much on its front foot, getting stuff done, and is marching in the best direction that's going to set that team up for long-term impact on the company and positive success in the marketplace. And that's hard, partly because the organizational incentives often pull you in one direction or the next, and it's usually more around agile points per week or launches per month kind of thing. And so for most of you, you're probably getting enough pressure to just go, go, go. I think maybe my invitation for you is to think, okay, is this the right strategy? Is this going to provide us with a sustainable, defensible, competitive advantage that is unique and needed in the marketplace? And is our product roadmap supporting that very clear positioning and vision? Because if you're really gonna have a big win, you're gonna want to have a strong point of view on what this product is and what it's for, and why it's different. And it can't just be, oh yeah, we've made improvement across these areas. That's always going to be part of a roadmap, this incremental kind of fixing of pain points and removing of points of friction. But what's the raison d'etre for this product? What's the thing that's going to be its soul? And does everybody agree on that? And is that strategically sound and likely to set up the company for success? So some things to think about. Check out links below for more info about PJ and his work. So thanks again, PJ, for coming on the show. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. And let's get back to work. Bye, team.